Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Now, historic films made in the spring of 1948 and just released show Eniwetok preparing for heavily guarded and still largely secret tests of new atomic weapons. The test's purpose is to measure atomic effects on thousands of different materials, 30,000 tons of them, not, as at Bikini, to prove military effectiveness.
San Francisco police say that 9 persons have been arrested in a narcotics raid on the headquarters of the Grateful Dead, a widely popular singing group. 2 members of the group, Rod McKernan and Robert Weir, and their business manager, Danny Rifkin, have been booked on suspicion of possessing narcotics.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
We got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Well, strange lights are causing a viral buzz on YouTube. Could we have caught extraterrestrial activity on a recent newscast? Brandon Arroyo investigates.
As the newscast ended, the controversy began back on September 26th. What is that light shining in the back of the dark night sky?
With coverage reaching all the way back to 1948, for over 70 years, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Now, Fate Magazine Radio is carrying on that tradition of setting the standard in paranormal talk radio as we report and discuss some of the most mysterious and perplexing phenomena imaginable in this strange world of ours. Now, here is your host of Fate Magazine Radio, Kat Hobson.
Hello there. I hope you're having a good evening, and I want to welcome you to Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I am Kat Hobson, your host, and I am so looking forward to this conversation with Rich Hoffman. I have been in the paranormal field for some time. In fact, Paranormal Experience Radio is about to celebrate the 5th year of existence, and I'm so excited and pumped about that, and I want to tell all of my listeners thank you for your support, because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for y'all. But I also, through the course of my studies, because I consider anything anomalous to be part of the paranormal, whether it's ufology, cryptozoology, spiritual paranormal, you name it. If it is beyond the norm, obviously, if it's not normal, it's paranormal. And ufology has quickly become something over the last few years that I have just really been fascinated by. My guest tonight is one of the best in the field. He spent several years as the Alabama State Director for MUFON until he decided to make a change. He is now the manager for the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. He manages that with Robert Powell. I'm telling you that this group is an astounding group of individuals. So let's get Rich in here and let him tell us about that, because he can do it so much better than I can. Hi, Rich. How are you?
I'm fine, Kat. So good to be on with you again.
Well, it has been much too long. I am thrilled.
Enjoy all of our conversations and time together.
Yes. Well, you know, I did not start out with a fascination for ufology, and I think you know that. But I had experienced craft when I was younger, probably about the 6th grade, and I knew what I was seeing wasn't what my Special Forces Airborne Green Beret dad was trying to tell me it was, right? And I think it sat down in our cul-de-sac later that night, because I remember seeing green lights outside. They had tried to tell me it was a police car the next morning, and there wasn't anything red or blue or anything like that. So I do have history with seeing craft in the sky, but I'd never really thought to investigate that. You've done this for a long time. How long have you been an avid ufologist?
Well, if it's any clue, I've been at it for 55 years. I'm six. I just turned 68, and I started when I was 13 years old. So and just like you made a comment there that you didn't started in this, or with this interest in it. I didn't either. I think I don't know if I told you the story or not, but I was late for a class in science, and the teacher had a list of topics, and we were supposed to all do a book report, or actually give a presentation on whatever the topic was. And the only thing that nobody had signed up for was unidentified flying objects, and I didn't even know what they were. And I went up to my 8th grade science teacher and said, "What's a UFO?" And he said, "Well, you ever heard of flying saucers?" I said, "Yeah, I've seen movies and stuff." But he said, "Well, that's what the subject is, and go check it out." So, well, anyway, long story short, I ended up getting a D on my report because I really didn't have much of an interest in it. I can't
believe you ever got a D on a report.
I got my D on my first report. Yes, exactly.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and so you would think that would have killed it right there, but it didn't. What happened was the teacher started asking me a lot of questions, like, what about jet pursuits? What about this? And I said, well, I never even heard of that stuff. And so you can see how detailed my interest was there. Anyway, it was that evening or the next evening right after that. It was April 24th, roughly 1964. Walter Cronkite came on and was talking about a case in Socorro, New Mexico, of an incident there and with a police officer, and that was the Lonnie Zamora case. And I heard that, and I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. It sounds to me like the Air Force was really involved in it, and they were checking it out. I thought that's pretty cool. And then a couple of days after, I heard that, then I have an aunt that took me to a bookstore, and I actually went and I said, "Can you show me the UFO section, or a section where I might find UFO books?" And so they took me to that section. Then I went over and I took a look on the shelf, and there was a book that was called "The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects" by Captain Edward Ruppelt, the former head of Project Blue Book. And I picked that up and I took it home, and I decided that I was going to start to read it. And it was then that I realized, just how serious this stuff was, and that the fact of the matter was that it was just up the street from me, which is where Project Blue Book was in Dayton, Ohio. And that just, nailed me. It just, wow, there's a project on this, and it's right up the street, and yeah, there are jet pursuits of these things, and there are these kinds of incidents and stuff like that. I'm going that's fascinating. So my story, and I went from there, and I became absolutely obsessed about this subject. And my classmates, we just had our 50th class reunion, would probably be ones to tell you that I was a nerd walking around the hallways with a briefcase that had the word UFO on it, and I was throwing books in it all the time. And I then I started giving public lectures around the city of Dayton. And then some guy by the name of Phil Donahue got wind of the fact, and I ended up on Phil Donahue's show at age 15, and then
that I did not know.
Yeah, so I got that suddenly. Well, I mean, Kat, here's the interesting thing. So suddenly, I'm now like getting reports of everything paranormal. It wasn't just UFOs. It was I was getting ghost calls. I was getting, can you do this? Can you do that? There's a Bigfoot out here I need to check into, and so I was all over the board with different subjects, and I'd be trying to like help people out. And I'm going like, wow, I can't possibly keep up with all this phenomena. And then I started bumping into. I decided I was going to do case investigations and start doing that more seriously because people were automatically putting me there.
Well, sure, yeah.
And so I thought, well, I need to get my act together with investigations and what that means. And I eventually, in 1969, I joined the Midwest UFO Network, which later became MUFON, and it became the Mutual UFO Network. So I was one of those early birds that signed up with the Midwest UFO Network and got a hold of a manual finally and how to do that stuff. And I was out doing investigations, and I would bump into, even prior to Blue Book's closing, I was bumping into the Blue Book officers, and we would be investigating the same case. And so that was kind of an interesting experience. And then I made connections with the base personnel at Project Blue Book, and even Hector Quintanilla, who led to the closure of it. And I actually got a phone number where I could call up, and it was radar approach control to confirm sightings that were in that area, and they were cooperating with me like that.
That's pretty astounding, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, here I am, a citizen, but the amazing thing is I kept bumping into all the military people at the base, and they would be telling me some of their interesting stories and about their own personal encounters and things that were going on up there, including some alleged Hangar 18 out there where the Roswell debris was brought into. And, I was hearing about all that stuff that was going on. Of course, I'm not working with the military, and I had no clearance per se to get on the base other than when they would, let me go on and escort me or something like that. And I got escorted at one point going over to Foreign Technology Division and giving a lecture on the UFO subject to them. The people that were doing the actual real investigating. So I've had some unusual experiences like that over the years, and just kept it going, and I've been doing it, and here I am 55 years later, still at it. And I'm still a member of MUFON. I'm a lifetime member because I gave a nice donation to him at one point, and I'm a benefactor. I still, up until 2017, I was playing a leadership role at the headquarters level. I was the director of, at one time I was the deputy director of investigations for them. At the same time, I was the director of strategic projects, and I was looking for instrumentation to be able to help give to FIs to be able to do things in hotspots and get more data. And I decided that I'm going to push more for the science than they were, and a number of us decided to basically agree to do that and to create a scientific group, and that's where the Scientific Coalition got started. And we formalized it into an organization, and now we got about 70 scientists with PhDs, and all of them are credentialed, and and I'm very excited about that because now we're getting scientists to take this seriously, and especially after the Pentagon stuff that's been happening in the Nimitz case and various other things, and so we're starting to see them really get engaged again, and that's reassuring.
Well, it is very reassuring, and it's actually pretty astonishing because I was just at an event in Phoenix recently, and I met Kevin Day. I met an awful lot of people. Kevin Day impressed me so very much. really enjoyed him.
Yep. We've got. We of course interviewed him before everybody got wind of the fact that there was a Kevin Day that was doing this.
Well, people didn't put that together, right? Because you've got the pilots up there, but somebody controlled the pilots. Somebody had to scramble them.
And
for a reason.
Robert Powell got a hold of that information years ago. He got wind of this report in the fighter sweep article that was put in by that Paco Ciccieri. I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but anyway, Paco had done an article in the Fighter Sweep magazine about it, and I think that piqued Robert's interest, and then Robert pursued it even further, and then we started identifying who the crew members were, and started making contact with them, and had early interviews with them, including Kevin Day. He was one of the first ones we actually interviewed. And then Kevin was able to help us connect into having other interviews. And so that's what led up to our 270-page paper that we published on our site. It's available, where we looked at the Nimitz case. And so I'm very excited because that article that we all helped kind of put together after looking at that case and doing all the interviews and then doing the analysis from a scientific standpoint and the mathematics and stuff and the physics involved. It got passed around up on the Hill. It got passed around. Lou Elizondo helped pass us up to Chris Mellon. Chris passed it around and got it into a lot of different corridors up on the Hill. And so it's good because I think that with that, again, it's one of those things where it's like you're starting to see science wanting to emerge to really do something with it. And scientists need data.
Yes.
And so that case, that Nimitz case, had a lot of data associated with it, including the video and including the fact that Kevin was so great about recording things like, the object descending down from heights down to sea level in 0.78 seconds. By the way, his story changed from when we first did it. Originally, it was that we were told that it was dropping from 80,000 to about 20,000 in 0.78 seconds. So in our report, we did the math based on that. And then we come to find out later that and this is part of what happens when you're talking about a memory from 14 years ago.
Right.
But anyway, then he came back and said, no, it was actually it went from 28,000 to about 50 foot above the water in 0.78 seconds. So our paper doesn't have that math, but we since then are publishing another paper that's actually going to go into a scientific journal, where we've now corrected it to the point where we are showing that the object went from, and I think it was like something on the scale of about 24,000 miles an hour, as opposed to what we had in our paper, which would have been about 104,000 miles an hour.
Either one is not going to be kind to a human. I mean,
without a doubt.
It's just fascinating to me. I have been following that ever since Tom DeLonge showed up, and I was like, oh, a rock star ufologist. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But he's always been interested, right? So I just found that it gets a whole different group of people coming in with their interest, and I love that. But we're about to go to our first break. I do want to let people know that if you want to participate in chat, bring your questions. So far, Tamatha and I are the only two over in the WBHM-DB.com chat. That can change quickly, but we've got the Spreaker chat going as well. So if you're on the app, go and hit the chat. And if you're on a computer, then WBHM-DB.com is your place to get to the chat room. or you can also get there at fatemag.com. But we will be right back, and I am so having fun. I'm looking forward to the rest of this conversation. This is going to go too fast.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming. To the skeptic, there will never be enough. Hello everyone. Join Kevin and Jennifer Malik, the host of Paraversal Universe, every Friday here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCET FM and The Rift. Log on or tune in as they check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, cryptids and monsters, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, metaphysics, and forbidden archaeology. Listen as Kevin and Jennifer interview the top minds in their respective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries. For future show and archive information, one can find Paraversal Universe on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe under various Paraversal Universe headings. So, for excellent talk radio about the unknown and unexplained, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society, Ltd., and produced by WBHM-DB.com.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I am Kat Hobson, the voice of fate, as it were, joined by my guest, Rich Hoffman. Rich is a fascinating man, and not just his ufology things. He and his family have so much fun. I really enjoy them, learning about them, and seeing all of your travels and stuff. I mean, that's why I didn't feel bad about the Rocket City man, right? Because I know that you have fun with everything. So
I do. I enjoyed that too. Rocket City Man. That's a new moniker for myself, I guess.
Well, my husband is an Elton fan, almost to the point of, goodness gracious, David.
Yeah.
But we have both enjoyed shows with him for so long. And every time that I think about, because you are from the Rocket City, or you're there, and I'm just like, well, I am so going to use that. And I'm glad that you didn't run screaming from the building. Thank you for that.
No, yeah, it's so funny because we're just Elton John fans as well, and we've been twice now here. And when he comes into town, of course, he sings Rocket Man, and you just the whole audience is going crazy with that because it's like that fits for this city. It's called Rocket City.
A bunch of rocket scientists there.
Yeah, exactly. But thank you. We have a lot of people that live vicariously through our exploits here. We do a lot of travel, and we really love it, and we get a kick out of it. In fact, we're planning our next big trip next year to go down the and do a Prague to Paris river cruise. And
oh my goodness,
we're always doing something. And,
you are.
And it's just a lot of fun. And this is UFOs don't eat up the whole thing. I do live.
And you live well. I like that.
Yeah.
And I also like that you're just so enamored still with your bride. That's a beautiful thing.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I got
Absolutely.
a wonderful bride. Yeah, wonderful bride. We're walking hand in hand to a lot of different places all the time. So it's a great relationship, and she supports me in all this crazy stuff that I do with UFOs. So she even comes to them now. It's like, that's pretty good.
That is pretty good. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Excuse
me.
So
we're planning planning next year's conference, and that'll be on June 5th through the 7th here in Rocket City again. So we're doing the planning on that and getting all the presenters lined up, and looks like it's going to be at the same place where we had it, which was the Rocket City Tavern. And so we're looking forward to doing it and bringing scientists back here to Huntsville. So it's going to be exciting. We had such a good response from it this year that we thought, well, we'll do it again. So,
well, you had several people who are just they're right this minute the public face of ufology, and to me that's an interesting thing, because I keep hearing how they are trying so very hard to separate themselves from UAP versus UFO. And, yet the Department of Defense itself called them a UFO group. And that, by nature of the beast, just because the terminology changes, it's still the same thing. But it's being rebranded to get better response through government entities, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And to kind of take the woo-woo out of it?
There's too much baggage with the UFO thing. I mean, here's where I'm at with that. Going back to Ruppelt, who was the one who coined the term unidentified flying object. I mentioned that earlier. Well, over the years, I mean, there's problems with that term. And let me put it to you this way. Most people, when they don't see something up in the sky that they can figure, they call it a UFO. Right?
Truth.
And Hynek looked at it from the context that it wasn't a UFO until it had an investigation done on it. All right? So it's only after you do an investigation and you determine that it's not an IFO, or identified flying object, that you could then call it a UFO. And that was Hynek's take on that term, okay? Well, the problem is that, you may have come up and identified that object as an IFO, and the problem is that the witness hangs on to it as a UFO. All right? So, so then you get into the problems where they hang on to it, and then over the period of time, UFOs automatically have become one of those things where it's like a joke, or it's it's become even a carnival atmosphere in many retakes, because so many of these things are tied directly into, it's got to be alien, even though, not all the cases are alien, right? So, and there are phenomena that are unexplained, like the Cloverdale stuff that I've got, and as I've mentioned to you, there's Earth lights out there that are being mistaken and called UFOs, or called spook lights, or called various other things. That are unnatural phenomena that we don't understand and haven't been able to get scientists to really focus on. And it's problematic because, but they are many times repeatable in certain areas. Well,
the ones in Cherokee, North Carolina are.
Yeah. Well, so you have the Marfa lights, you've got the Brown Mountain lights. There's all these stories about these things. There's Hestel in Norway, the Minlin lights in Australia. And so there's a lot of these different areas where you'll have maybe an increased incidence of those things. But But again, that's an unexplained aerial phenomena or whatever, like, you know. And so you try to get into it where you're trying to come up with the fact that there's this broader perspective, and the fact that the objects are underwater, in the air, and out in space gets rid of the word flying, and it's actually more like unidentified aerospace phenomenon. And that's where we've gone, because aerospace is one term that highlights and explains the same things, whether it's underwater, whether it's in the air, or in space. So aerospace takes in all three of those media. And so that's part of the reason why we looked at the unidentified aerospace phenomena as, for us, is the better term. And it was interesting when we had all the people here that attended in March, our conference, because I asked the question. I said, do you think changing the term, and these are the scientists, these are the ones that are, you know, out there going back to schools, in some cases they're professors and so on and so forth, and they're all saying that, yeah, it's better to change the term, because when we mention the UFO, the stigma, you know, comes up and people go crazy about it, you know, and so it's all aliens, or they connote it as being, you know, a bunch of people with alien heads and alien costumes, and at these, you know, kinds of events that we all go to, these conferences and stuff. And, you know, the UFO term is, you know, over the years has gotten more and more blurry as you go along, because suddenly if there's a burp in the sky or, you know, something like that, oh, it's got to be a UFO. It's got to be, everything has to be a UFO that you can't explain, and that's not the case, you know. So anyway, it's got a lot of baggage to it, and I think a lot of the people that are in the science communities and even in the military community said that they could probably embrace better the term unidentified aerospace phenomena than they could the UFO. Interesting, huh?
It is interesting, and something that makes me a little bit, in fact, the only thing really about the direction this stuff is going that concerns me is there are experiencers who have had a lifetime of trauma, or a one time of trauma, or just one time of interest, right? But there are experiencers that are actually addressed, well, through MUFON with their experiencer program, but with the science side and the military side, who is talking to these people now? Who will these people have as a resource to get help or guidance, or who's going to be taking their statements? Is MUFON going to stay part of that with the scientific community, or is this going to be edging? And this is just me asking because I worry about experiencers. But
I understand. I mean,
what is going to be the support for them through these changes, do you think?
I don't know, and I will say this much, that, you know, over the years, I mean, you started off with, I mean, the very initial years that I got engaged with this thing, going back into the, like, 60s, and then there's people that got started even in the 50s and stuff like that were with us. You know, we didn't even have abductions and experiencers. I mean, that was not even a part of the equation. You didn't even hear about that type of stuff. And then it wasn't, you know, until roughly the Betty and Barney Hill case that I became myself aware that, oh, well, wait a minute, you know, there's something else going on here. And suddenly after that, you started hearing more and more about it, to the point where it's like, you know, there's a lot more people that are claiming that they're having these experiences. And you know, the problem comes in that, you know, the nature of that, even investigating it, what do you do? I mean, unless there's some sort of physical evidence associated with it, in some cases there might be like the implant type thing, or you might have a case where there are some markings on a car, or because they were taken out of the car, and there's a number of cases like that. Or there are some cases where there's like some ground evidence. There's no data that you have to go on, and it's really all about almost like the psychology of these people's experience, and then there's like the medical aspects, there's the psychological aspects, and a typical UFO investigator who's looking for like something that they think that might be nuts and bolts per se, and it does leave physical evidence, it doesn't have any kind of skills to be able to do that. And so when you're talking about, I investigate UFOs, but I don't investigate abductions. I don't investigate a whole lot of other things. I don't investigate ghosts. So what we always have had to do was to figure out, well, especially with people that are coming forward and making these claims, that how do you distinguish, like you would with any of these subjects, like even with the UFO subject, as I pointed out to you, that there are IFOs. There are things that people see that are natural up there, or that people misidentify. And so you have, in order to study the UFO, you've got to eliminate all of the cases that might be IFOs and get down and study that, whatever that residue of cases are. Well, the same thing holds for even abduction cases. I used to have a whole bunch of people that were sending me photos of marks on their arms or bumps and saying, well, maybe I was abducted. Well, I mean, if you took all those people that said that I may be, or I think that I was, and they want to show you that they've got little marks or they've got little bumps. One guy sent me a photo of his arm and had like a golf ball size thing. I said, wow. Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about that, you'd have to have somebody that with medical training to do something with it, and then you've got to get doctors or something like that engaged, and that's not free. You have to have somebody who's going to pay for it. I mean, who's going to pay that medical bill, for that doctor to be able to do it? And
it would have to be the individual.
Correct. Yeah, and so now you go to these individuals and they say, well, you tell them, look, I think you need to go get some medical, whatever. But they say, well, I can't afford it. Well, MUFON can't afford it either.
Exactly.
And so that's fine. We want to be able to help them out, but there's no, per se, process in place unless, they, over the years, I mean, Kathy Martin and a number of them have been working to be able to get some rigor to it, to where you can somewhat eliminate some of the things that might or might not be actual, abduction, if you would, cases. And then they have a number of psychologists and various other maybe medically trained people that can look at the case and then say, well, we might want to be able to help out in some way, and maybe they can get some maybe money somewhere to be able to help that individual out. But you don't want to do that for the general population at all, that wants to come up and tell you that, if there's like something like 1 million cases of people claiming abductions, how could you possibly even afford that, right? And then how do you rule out all the other aspects of this in terms of the psychological aspects? My wife studied holotropic breathing, and she's a trained psychologist and was doing clinical work, and so she took a number of courses in what they call holotropic breathing, and that also leads into people having like abduction-like experiences just by a breathing motion.
That's interesting. So, I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, I mean, and then we talked to the individual that was doing that study, and so okay, well, that's interesting. So then you have the everything from the sleep paralysis and various other things. Again, we just don't have the tools and the data and the affordability to go out and really to do that properly. And so I'm with you. I think that there are maybe a lot of excellent cases out there, and hopefully those people that have that, along with some type of evidence or something that scientists can help us with or whatever, that would be great. attempted to try to put devices in people who are claiming abductions in their rooms, instrumentation to be able to collect data. But the problem was that apparently there was either some sort of an EM effect or something like that might have come into play on that device, or you got to think about the fact that it didn't pick up whatever was going on and it somehow impacted or affected. And so, again, it's how do you get the data? And that's what scientists, like I said, want. And the same with medical people or other people that want to believe that there's a whole bunch of aliens coming down and doing these things that are abducting people and doing these medical kinds of things, if you would. And then you compare that with, if you go back to the early days with UFO cases, before we had the abduction thing that came on board, you'd see that the alien beings, if anything, they would scurry back aboard. They didn't want to be seen. They weren't out allegedly coming to take people. In fact, they all didn't look the same as the little grays. And so it seems like we've had this mythology, if you would, created that they all have to be grays with big eyes, when in fact, you look at the sheer number of cases that have been reported of beings, and they're everything from, take a look at the Pascagoula case. I mean, that's not certainly any gray.
That is certainly not. That looks like the Rock'em Sock'em kind of a thing. It looks like a mummy with horns.
You got that thing, or you've got the Kelly Hopkinsville case where, they were shooting at them and they're like little creatures that were running like floating or something like that, and they had like they were hit when they were being shot at. They were shot at. They would like roll backwards and then had a metallic sound to them. And so, the varieties are out there, like, we're huge. And so, again, science tries to take that and come up with some sort of an answer to it, but it doesn't even know how to begin to approach that.
Well, because there's no rhyme or reason when you come to look at data like that.
Exactly. And then you have, objects that are the size of a basketball that are going around you. Well, does that mean that there are little aliens in it, or are these drones, And it's more likely that they are some sort of like a drone-like thing, more so than, that they're manned, if you would. And so it's rather interesting. It's a very interesting phenomena overall. Then you have the animal mutilation cases or something like that, where you might have like a light or something like that that's being seen around that area, or a crop circle where you see lights around it or something of that nature. Or is that a different phenomena?
Is it a different source? Exactly. But we're at a break, and I apologize for interrupting you, but we will be right back. Y'all come back too, because this is just amazing.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Abnormal Alabama presents Crypticon October 25th and 26th at the Port of the Wharf, Orange Beach. Bigfoot, the paranormal, authors and speakers, vendors, and your chance to experience the Psychomantium. There'll be a costume contest and much, much more. October 25th and 26th at the Port of the Wharf, Orange Beach. Get more info, directions, and tickets available now at abnormalalabama.com. That's abnormalalabama.com.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back. You are listening to Fate Mag Radio, and I am Kat. I'm your host, joined tonight by Rich Hoffman. Rich, thank you for taking that question seriously, relevant to experiencers, because I have not heard anyone at all in the course of all of the recent media hoopla and different things that are happening even address that topic. And to me, I think that's a big deal. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
It's a pleasure. I mean, I like you, I do care about the people that are having these experiences. And I know I've learned from my wife, who's a psychology background. Of course, I had psychology when I was in college as well. But I mean, to me, it's like one of those things where you hate to see people going through such kinds of like experiences, whether they're real or not, and you certainly want to be able to reach out and help them in the best way you can. And I get asked all the time about, I should have hypnotic regression. And I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of controversy about doing that.
There is.
And that you might be, and I tell these people that. I said, look, I understand you want to get the answers, but at what cost? And I said, there's some times where there's not some good outcomes from that. And so, if you're going to do it at all, God, please make sure you get somebody that's completely certified and knows what the heck they're doing and can help you out. But don't consider it as being actual proof that you actually had that. And scientists won't accept that. And so if you're out trying to convince others, or if you're just trying to do it for yourself, I mean, go walk gingerly and be be cautious. And I honestly tell people when they have their abduction cases or something of that there, and that it looks like and sounds like that it might have happened, and I'm right up front with them. I'm saying, look, just be prepared the fact that you're going to probably have to take the costs on yourself, and unless you've got some real convincing evidence, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of attention from even the UFO world, because they're out to try to get answers too. And it's a very complicated situation. So I feel for them, though.
I do too. And you're right, because if you step back, the complications just keep piling up.
Yep.
And then aside from experiencers, then you have these, you brought up the animal mutilations and things of that nature. Yep. And that's a whole other side of the historic experiences. So,
without a doubt. I've investigated those, by the way. Those are even weird.
What struck you as being the most weird about that?
Well, I mean, in this particular case that I investigated of a baby beefalo that was mutilated, first off, the farmer has a Charolais cow and a buffalo. He was trying to get them to successfully mate, and there were prior to that there were several attempts that didn't go through, and so finally here was one that had made it and was birthed, and the farmer finds it now out in the middle of his field, dead. It had a 6-inch perfect circular cut above the heart, down to the brisket. It had the left tip of the ear severed, and it had been exsanguinated, meaning that there's no blood. And there's no blood on the ground, no nothing to indicate anything. There was a strange dark residue that was on top of the wheat, or the tall grass, I should say. It wasn't wheat. There was tall grass. And if you were up in the air, it would look like an arrow pointing to where you could find the animal, as if something human had done this.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
And there, the Charolais cow the mother was not with the animal. and he found it at sunrise early in the morning. And anyway, he was Erwin Zimmerman. Zimmerman is the name of the gentleman. He's now deceased, but Erwin took the animal on the back of his truck and drove into the sheriff's office, and was quite upset that somebody had done this to his animal. And the sheriff said, well, I don't know what it was, and there's, you need to go take it over to the vet. And so he then, goes over to the vet, and the vet looks at it and says, well, I've never seen cuts like this, and the thing had no blood in it, and, it was too precise for anything that I know of. And so he didn't get a lot of answers to much of that. He did file, the vet put a report together that basically said that he had never seen anything like this before. And then the farmer took it back and buried the animal on his farm, right? Dug up and put it in the ground. Well, we learned about it because there was a neighbor next door that had seen a UFO or a silvery object that was that day when that happened, that was going in through this like woods area where there was like a creek, and the object was just moving through that woody area away from that farm over to his farm. And his grandson and him were on a combine, and they were doing some combining, and happened to see that object. Well, we got wind that there was a UFO report. Then we found out about the fact that there was this mutilation next door. Well, we went and tried to see if we could dig up the animal, and this is only 2 weeks later. There was nothing left of the animal in the ground. It was completely gone. There were a few tufts of hair, and I think that there was a little bit of bone, but there was nothing else.
And it had been buried the whole time?
Yeah, it was buried the whole time.
Wow.
And so what would cause such an accelerated rate of decomposition? And how could that be like that? I mean, and so we even took soil samples over to a lab to see if they could run some tests on the soil, because we were saying, well, maybe there's carnivorous beetles, maybe there's some lime in this, maybe there's something, we try to say, is there something unusual about the soil? And we couldn't find anything unusual in the soil sample analysis. So it just made no sense at all, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then while we were doing our investigations, we had a plane that was circling overhead that was unmarked, that was kind of like observing us, and actually followed one of my investigators like about 20 miles to their home.
Well, that's not suspicious at all.
Yeah, no, it's not suspicious. That's a normal event in the abduction phenomena, apparently. So, but anyway, isn't that weird? I mean, it's
well,
just
but
like,
I mean, yes, that is so weird.
And these are very common kinds of things that are, I guess, going on with that whole phenomena. I've not done any more animal mutilation cases, but I know that they still continue, and I know that even my sister, who lives on a farm in Missouri, had a number of animals that had went through this. And so I don't know what to make of that. There's a lot of people that want to connect it to the military, obviously. They want to connect it to being that it might be testing of being done. And I'm saying, well, why are you doing testing like that? And is that the way to do testing?
Well, if you're doing testing, you would have your own farm.
And then there's these odd lights that people see, and so like, what are the lights, and is that connected to it? And there's military helicopters and people claiming that they're seeing that. But here's where I'm at. Maybe the military helicopters are actually trying to capture what's doing it and show up on the scene after the light objects or whatever these things are leave. And so that doesn't mean that they're naturally the ones that did it. They might be they might be investigating the case.
Exactly.
But anyway,
and that would be more logical.
It's a very weird world that we live in. There's a lot of weird, unexplainable stuff, and And, I rely on, experts in all those different unique fields. And while I just focus on UFOs, and that's just pretty much where I've been for the last 55 years.
And that's why you're so good at it. Well,
thanks.
You are. I mean, to be able to be as analytical as you have to be to deal with all of this information, I mean, the data is overwhelming because it happens.
Yes, it does.
And, now it's actually, I'm curious as to what the initial reaction is going to be to the information being released, because to actually say we got no idea, it was just there, and then to have pilots talking about how many of them there are.
Oh yeah,
These weren't just one or two. The ones that are in the videos were just the ones that got caught on camera. But
we've had a history of this kind of thing. I mean, to me, I'll be honest with you, Kat. There's nothing new about what's being reported than there has been all along if people study the cases from the past. And I guess what I'm trying to say is UFOs have always been in those three mediums that I'm talked about. UFOs go from standstill to, incredible rates of speeds in short order, and they reverse direction. They defy inertia. They don't create sound. There's no sound associated with it. There's no repulsive force standing behind one. And so they've always been doing that kind of thing. So it's the same object that's been out there since 1950, as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, my point is that, now you have a whole bunch of people waking up to it because they're hearing about it for the first time. And I understand that. There's people that weren't even around when we went and landed on the moon. I've got family members. We're not even here then, and
yes.
So now there's this awakening going on, and it's like, oh my God, there's Tic Tacs, and I'm thinking like, yeah, we've had Tic Tacs for a long, long time, we've had gumballs, we've had all kinds of things flying around here, and
the little spinning tops, yeah,
we've had cubes, we've had all different kinds of strange things. And so, the challenge to the UFO investigator today is the fact that there are so many more IFOs, and they're getting more and more all the time, that, you have to try to keep up with understanding, well, what is out there in order to get and to distill out what really is the UFO and what is it doing. And most often the general public doesn't spend a whole lot of time looking up. They're looking at cell phones. They're looking down.
I know. And, I mean, we could have an invasion tomorrow. And unless somebody got a selfie with the flights, then, nobody would believe it. So
if it wasn't Swedish, then it didn't exist.
That's right. That's right. But it just fascinates me because there's so much literally happening. I have been an outside person. I have dogs, but I don't walk them. I have a backyard, and I clean up, but that's in the daytime. But then, I'm a hammock layer, so I see stuff all the time. And I'm out there late at night. I'm out there early in the morning. It just depends on the schedule for the day. But I was enjoying the pre-sunrise this morning, and I had 4 different satellites come over. And you better believe that when I see that, I pop an app up there, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I have 2. I have both of them on all of my devices, but I use one on my phone and one on my iPad. Because they better both be saying that that's the satellite that's coming by me. And, so I do pay attention. I do watch, mainly because things sometimes get in my way. Right? I'm trying to see something and I don't want to be, distracted, especially. Well, I look for all kinds of things. I'm learning my sky better every day. But, I watch. and I kind of know what I'm looking for, and I know what's not what I'm looking for. So it's a real...
The challenge gets, yeah, and that's good. I mean, a lot of people know that. I mean, they could be looking at the planet Jupiter and not know that that's the planet Jupiter, or they don't even check it, or there's objects that are out there like now drones that are being flown, and the problem you have is that even when you get a UFO report like of somebody that sees something at night, well, first off, you can't. How do you determine the distance of the light? How do you determine the angular size of the light? Is the light the entire object or just a part of it? And we don't know that. Somebody will see three lights up in the sky, and then they'll connect it and say, oh, it was a triangle. Well, was it a triangle or three objects? And so we don't know that. And so you can't really get much from that. And there's not a lot of... And even then, again, they'll take their cell cameras or something like that, their cell phones, and try to get a recording. All it is just a bunch of lights, and you really don't get any scientific data from that,
No.
And then
I'm going to have to interrupt you just a second. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Because we're at the top of the hour.
Oh.
And I want to continue this when we come back, because this is the meat and potatoes. Yep. I want to continue this track, but we will be back. Y'all enjoy this. Hopefully there's a little good news out there today, right? And we will catch you on the flip side.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Old Edwards Inn and Spa in downtown Highlands, North Carolina. Savor the holiday season with the Comfort and Joy Spa and Dinner Package for two. Visit oldedwardsinn.com to plan your holidays in Highlands.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Another whistleblower has contacted the intelligence community's Inspector General about President Trump's dealings with Ukraine. Attorney Mark Zaid, who's representing both informers, says the second person has spoken to the intelligence community's internal watchdog. Trump says he has done nothing wrong. NPR's Mara Eliason has more.
This is like a trail of breadcrumbs. Each revelation leads to something else. Some of them are pretty dramatic, like those text messages where we learned that it wasn't just Rudy Giuliani freelancing in this Ukraine pressure campaign. It was U.S. diplomats actively pushing Ukraine to investigate Biden and the 2016 election on behalf of the president.
NPR's Mara Eliason. House lawmakers will continue their impeachment inquiry this week. The head of the UN mission in Iraq is calling for an end to violence after more than 100 people were killed in nearly a week of anti-government protests throughout the country. Thousands more are wounded. As Linda Fasulo reports, demonstrators say they are protesting government corruption and unemployment.
The UN's top official in Iraq described the killings as a senseless loss of life and called for those responsible to be held to account. The violence is considered the deadliest since the defeat of ISIS 2 years ago, and the protests are being viewed as the first significant challenge to the government of Prime Minister Adil Abdul-Mahdi. The Iraqi government has been using curfews and restrictive internet access to try to limit the rallies. Meanwhile, Iraqi security forces are accused of firing upon protesters with live ammunition and tear gas. For NPR News, I'm Linda Fasulo in New York.
As the strike of nearly 50,000 workers at General Motors enters its fourth week, there's a snag in the contract talks. The UAW's top negotiator with General Motors says talks took a turn for the worse over the weekend after the union presented a proposal to the company yesterday, which General Motors responded to today by reverting back to an offer that had already been rejected by the union. Dustin Dwyer of Michigan Radio has more.
Workers say they want better protections for temporary employees and an increase in wages to make up for concessions they made when GM was in financial trouble. UAW Vice President Terry Dittis told members on Friday that, quote, good progress had been made in the talks, but by Sunday, things had changed. Dittis said the union, quote, could not be more disappointed with General Motors after its latest response. In a statement, the company says it remains committed to negotiations until an agreement can be reached. For NPR News, I'm Dustin Dwyer in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
And the strike has shut down GM's U.S. production since it started 21 days ago. That's been hampering manufacturing in Mexico and Canada. It's also impacting suppliers, too. You're listening to NPR News from Washington. Pope Francis is denouncing contemporary forms of colonialism and urged conservatives to be open to change. As NPR's Silvio Poggioli reports, the Pope spoke at a Mass at the Vatican at the start of a divisive meeting on the Amazon and ministering to its indigenous peoples.
St. Peter's ornate Renaissance decor was in stark contrast to the feathered headdresses and brightly painted faces of some indigenous people. The Amazon meeting has angered the Pope's critics, who charge it implicitly recognizes forms of paganism such as the worship of nature. In his homily, Francis prayed that God preserve us from new forms of colonialism.
Il fuoco appiccato da interessi che distruggono.
Fires like the one that recently devastated Amazonia, he said, are fed by interests that destroy. They blaze up, he added, when people want to promote only their own ideas, form their own group, wipe out differences in the attempt to make everyone and everything uniform. Silvio Poggioli, NPR News, Rome.
Astronauts on board the International Space Station started the first of 5 spacewalks today to replace old batteries with the more powerful lithium-ion ones. The 400-pound batteries, half the size of a refrigerator, are part of the space station's solar power network. NASA plans to wrap up the 5 battery spacewalks this month, and then that will be followed by a Russian spacewalk. I'm Janine Herbst, and you're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're joining us here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting for Fate Mag Radio. I am Kat Hobson, your host, the voice of fate. I love that. And I am joined tonight by somebody that I think is just an amazing guest and an amazing person. He is a ufologist. He is a good heavens, I have lost my mind. Army. So he is a consultant for the U.S. Army. He is a systems architect, but mainly he is a knowledgeable guy when it comes to all things UFO, UAP, and he has got a lot of knowledge to share. So, Steve, good heavens, we were talking about Steve a moment ago. Rich Hoffman, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Hi, yeah, glad to be here. And no, my name's not Steve.
Nope, not even on a bad day. So
not even on a bad day. Anyway, yeah, we were talking about Steve. But anyway, yeah, I've had my share of time. Obviously, 55 years of looking at it and investigating cases and stuff like that. So I've got a wealth of knowledge. In fact, I try to share it as much as I can. I've got a monthly meeting that I have here, and we try to talk about the subject and the challenges with it. And it's been interesting. A lot of people are very interested in the subject.
Well, they are, because, as you said, when Project Blue Book was happening, when the initial, contacts were being made, and, we came up with Close Encounters, or I did. That was, a lot of people's introduction. E.T. was another generation's introduction to even the thought that this could be going on. And Fate Magazine, we've been in publication since 1948. So we've got 71 years of reporting on all this cool stuff too. And
I have got so many issues of Fate Magazine, you wouldn't believe it.
I would believe it. People held onto those. Did you ever get any of the trading cards?
No, I didn't get the trading cards. I'm ashamed that I wish I had some of those. But no, I actually have, oodles of Fate magazines. They were one of the few magazines you could find out there that talked about the UFO subject. And so It's like, wow, this is great.
Well, and they didn't just do mainstream subjects.
No.
One of my first shows was with a gentleman relevant to the Flatwoods Monster, Andrew Smith. I didn't even know these things. And so after the show, somebody sent me a message and said, well, that was just a paratrooper, right? And I'm like, I don't think that looks like a paratrooper. I know paratroopers. That was, I don't know any of them that have, like, hunter orange on their chutes or their bags or anything. So it was an interesting conversation that I had with that person. But Fate is great at getting information out, and I'm really proud to be part of it. So when you get information, you get your reports and you would go and do your investigations, were you ever an initial witness to a UFO? Did you ever have your own sighting?
I can honestly say that in 55 years, I've not seen a UFO that I couldn't explain. That was an unknown. So I've never had my own encounter with a Tic Tac or anything that's performing outside of the normal bounds of science. I have observed things that I was puzzled about, but when I would do my own investigation, if you would, I would find out that I could explain it. I had a real interesting experience in October of, I think it was 2012. Yeah, 2012. It was, it's almost like a couple of years from today, Anyway, the situation was that there was I was heading into work early in the morning, and I started receiving a phone call from a friend who said that he was over in a parking lot. He was observing some sort of an object that was in the sky that was going, it was like flashing or something like that. And it was really in a unusual place. And he called me and told me about it. And I said, well, that's interesting, And I was driving at the time when he was calling me. I said, well, let me, when I get out, let me see if I can look in the same direction that you're describing. And I happened to be heading into a meeting that I was going to be going into. And I was looking up, and I see this light that's going, it's a clear blue sky. It's a beautiful October morning. It's relatively cool. The winds were really light and stuff like that. And there were patchy clouds, but you could make out a lot of blue sky. But there was this light that was up there, and it was like very bright, and it was brighter than, any star. So it, during the day, when like that, you don't see stars much, but, the fact that this was significantly bright told me, well, this has got some illumination behind it. And it was like going from light to dark, if you would. I mean, you couldn't see it, and then a light again, and you couldn't see it, and it would do this continual pattern. Well, I took a film of it with my camera, and I tried to rope people that were going into the building to say, do you see that? Do you see that? Yeah, I don't know what that is. That's pretty interesting. And then they'd walk off, and of course I would still be out there. And then I had to race into my meeting because it was an important meeting about the future of my job. So
that would matter, yes.
So I got inside, and I told people that I said I might have seen something, my first UFO, if you would, but I don't know what it was. And I said I'd have to figure out what it was. And anyway, so I got to work at my Army location, and there was a gal with me that sits behind me that mentioned that she had seen this cylindrical-shaped object that was going over the highway. And I said, whoa, you're kidding. And she described it as being like, almost like a clear shopping bag or a laundry bag, if you would, that was cylindrical shape that was actually moving up into the sky. And anyway, so I took that as an interesting little tidbit because now there's multiple people. And so I thought, well, let me get on the internet and see if I could see anything that was going on. And sure enough, somebody had posted something up in Tennessee about that talked about a light that was on and off and on and off and on and off as well. And so I started to then look at it, and I was able to go into the MUFON database and see that a whole bunch of other people over a 4-day period saw that same object, and I was able to track it across 5 states.
Oh, my. Interesting.
And so it was moving relatively slow. The fact that it was seen and it covered a distance of getting up to, I think, near Virginia in Maryland, in that area. But I kept looking at the reports because the reports were coming in and saying it was a cylindrical object, and I was able to then track it going up through the different cities. And at one point, a gentleman in Kentucky actually got a close-up with a telescope, and you could see it was cylindrical, elongated, and it had like two main bodies, if you would, to it. And it had something that looked like a sensor on it. And it was clear and luminescent, you know. And so I realized there that it was some sort of a balloon of some sort of nature. So I began looking at potential balloons that might have been out there that had that shape. And the trouble was I couldn't find anybody that would own up to that balloon. And I thought, well, maybe somebody from NASA, because it was like right here, you know, in Huntsville, where it appeared to be gaining its height. Well, it turned out to be that about a year later, I got wind of it because there was an article that was in Wired magazine that talked about the Google Loon project. And Project Loon is a secret project that they had going on where they're testing balloons of different sizes, shapes, and various other things that would be able to provide internet service.
Oh, my gosh.
And so Project Loon was launching these balloons. Well, the one here was used, it was a NASA balloon, and it was long and cylindrical, and that's the one that they sent up that everybody was seeing as UFO across those 5 states, and it ended up in Canada, and they were actually tracking their balloon by UFO reports.
That's a riot.
Isn't that a riot? So here you go where you have a secret project that's a NASA project and balloons, and, you know, and of course it had me going thinking that maybe I had seen something, you know, of an unknown nature, if you would. But no, it was nothing more than a secret balloon project. So that's where I'm at, Kat. I've not had that, but I've had many other incredible experiences and investigations that have given me my aha moment. Standing in the middle of a wheat field where it's been completely obliterated to 70 foot in diameter, and the soil's like, you know, 2 feet deep, has been basically baked, if you would, and there's puffed wheat on the outside perimeter of that. When you're standing in the middle of that, you realize that there's something else here, and it's in the middle of a wheat field, and there's no markings, and you couldn't even begin to produce something like that. So that's an aha moment.
That is an aha moment.
Yeah. So I've had those kind of experiences, and I've had a lot of, you know, very credible people tell me some incredible stories and then you look at this case here, why should I doubt it? And why would I even say that there's nothing to it? There is something to it. They're real. And it's a global phenomenon. It's always been just as real in other countries as it is here. And so I don't doubt them at all.
I don't either. I don't. I mean,
it's just, yeah.
They're there.
Yeah. And so now the fact is, we know that they exist. We've known all along that they exist. The problem is we just don't know what they are, and we don't know enough. And how do we get scientists and use these military tools that we're coming up with now to be able to actually figure that out? And that's what I'm hoping that science will do.
Well, and that's what we're going to talk about when we come back from this break. This time is just really whizzing by. We'll be back, guys, with Rich Hoffman. So thank you so much. See you when this is done.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Several U.S. presidents are on record talking about the UFO mystery.
Presidents Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan both had UFO sightings of their own, but the current presidential campaign might be the first in which UFO disclosure has been championed by a major party candidate.
DIA, CIA, it moves around, is operating a program to train psychic spies to spy and use their powers against Russia. John Ronson writes about this in The Men Who Stare at Goats.
The first known sighting of a ghost took place right after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in the late 1860s during the administration of Ulysses Grant.
Project Paperclip, Clinton releases it all in 1998.
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I say, do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial.
It's a place where UFO hunters and scientists gather to examine paranormal activity in the region.
Some of the documents, this is bringing Nazi scientists into the United States to work here. So we fought against the Nazis, and it's not, this again is not a revelation. As early as 1947, 1946, we knew some of this, right?
On the paranormal, will we see U.S. President Barack Obama's foreign policy go intergalactic in a quest for gold stolen by aliens? We'll tell you at least how the White House responded to claims the chief executive has been teleporting to Mars. But let's get to today's Capitol account.
UFOs, hauntings, psychic abilities, conspiracy, ESP, cryptozoology. There are many things that remain unexplained in the inexplicable world around us, and we're talking about them here, looking for answers on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama. The truth is out there.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I am Kat Hobson, your host, with my guest, Rich Hoffman. And Rich, I am so glad that you're here, and I'm so sorry that I had to interrupt you, because we were just moving into a groove there. But I find it fascinating that your shot at a UFO turned out to be a balloon. And I think that's often the case. I know, as you said, credible people who have described their experiences to me, people that I have researched, through the years on my show, because I do not do just spiritual paranormal experienced. I cover all anomalous topics. And I find it fascinating that even without my experiences, I know they're there too, because of the people who have told me their experiences. So my question for you that I wanted to bring is with the actual acknowledgement, because what happened in the last few weeks is so much more than we have ever gotten from the government. And I don't think it was a mistake. I don't think it was something that someone misspoke. I think it was actually, yes, and we have a president who acknowledges being briefed regularly on the topic. And then we have, video footage where pilots are talking about what they're experiencing, and that there are so many of them. Not experiences, but so many craft observing their exercises. And, It's like a fleet is out there watching our fleet do their thing. And it's just an amazing time, really, for ufology, UAPs, wherever you want to go with that. But it really is a fascinating time.
Yeah, it is. To me, I look at it like, it's kind of a renewal for me. I mean, to me, it was a fascinating time being back in the Project Blue Book days.
Oh, yes.
Because even there, the Air Force couldn't explain 701 cases that they received. And so there were unidentifieds back there that they were acknowledging that they couldn't explain. So, I mean...
People laugh at me when I say that was the original disclosure, when they had to say that. But it really was. They had to admit that they could not, no matter what they did, they could not find justification or explanation for these experiences.
Correct. And so, with that in mind, the Air Force is, or at least the Pentagon's coming out and saying that there are these cases that they can't explain either. And, the Navy's now coming out and saying that they have these cases that they can't explain. So, there are some of them that I think if we really had the cases and we looked at them, we could come up with explanations for some of those things. But again, I want to stress to you that that there are some of these things like the Tic Tac that are performing maneuvers that we have nothing that can perform like that. And so it's not an IFO. One of the cases where they talked about a black, like square kind of like thing with some sort of a circle on the inside of it could have been a radiosonde balloon. And those are that shape. And so the pilot might have flown by it at a high rate of speed and saw it and described it as a square with some sort of a circle on the inside of it, and that's what it would have looked like. But anyway, the point I'm trying to get at is those cases would need to be investigated just the same way we treat any other cases to rule out the fact that the pilot may have not seen something and mistook it. Mm-hmm. But when you have when you have objects that are now being tracked on like Aegis radar, or the Spy 1, or you've got aircraft with like things like the ATFLIR and the other AESA types of new devices that are tracking objects that are making incredible turns that would now, that we just couldn't do. That's where the case gets stronger, and you've got that data, and it would be fabulous if we had access to that data. And the problem we even had with the Nimitz case is that allegedly all that data disappeared. And depending upon who you talk with, that are the crew members, were saying that there were people collecting the hard drives and various other things with the data on it. And so where does that data go? And why? I know that the military would like to have it. And then there's obviously some sort of scientists that are out there in the military, either a contractor or something of that nature, or a scientist that they may have that's out like studying that data or doing something with it, and it will remain in the military world. And people like me and the other scientists we have are eking for that kind of data as well, and have no access to that radar data. And so it's frustrating for us. We're fortunate that we were able to get those videos, because you can do a limited amount of study on them because they weren't long enough and they weren't very good quality, and they had been stripped and edited by the declassification process that took place. But it's unfortunate that we didn't have the full story on that, because we're wanting to get the message out, and apparently the military wants to keep it internal. And I can understand
But it's already out.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, the data about the object's actual maneuvers and so is not being shared with us. And the other part of it is you really aren't hearing a lot from the actual government per se about that. You're hearing it from TTSA, and those are
who, by the way, does not own those videos. Just putting that out there. Who, by the way, does not own those videos. Because I was told not to use those in a presentation that I'm putting together, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm an American taxpayer. Mm-hmm. This came from my DOD. I think I can use that. But, and in all honesty, it was not from anybody with TTSA because I'm just not even a blip on their radar. But I was told that those were their videos. I said, no, I don't believe so. And then I found out that they're not and why they're not. So, but those things were actually never classified properly to keep those from coming out, from what I understand. So if FOIA was able to gain access.
What's really interesting about this, and this is just because I work in the DoD world, right? That these videos were captured and stored on the SIPRNet, and that's a secret classified network. Mm-hmm. Well, it takes a lot to be able to get something from the SIPRNet down into getting it down classified, if you would, and to put that on what they call a NIPRNet, which is the non-classified side of the house. So, like, I have two computers on my desk. I have a SIPR machine and I've got a NIPR machine, and the SIPR is the one where it's classified, and so I have this two computer worlds, and they don't connect to each other. So it takes a lot to be able to get something that's out of the SIPR world. Well, apparently this was, somehow taken off of the SIPR world, and then it was somehow passed over to the ATIP project, whether it was the OSAP at the time or the ATIP, I don't know when they received it, but they had the originals and the full thing, and in fact, I'm told that Walker, Senator Walker, actually probably saw the entire unedited clip of these objects, and apparently that they did a lot more in the sections that we don't see, that makes it convincing that there was actually something there that's unusual. But in these short clips that we got, where again the quality was not good and they were stripped of the metadata and everything else, you really, when you take a look at the clips and you try to apply science to it, you can't really do it effectively. You can get close, and we tried to do that in our paper, but it's still a struggle to be able to look at that and to get much from it. For example, the Tic Tacs were described as having some sort of like a little antenna or something like that, a little L-shaped kind of like antennas, if you would, that were out of the bottom of the craft. And you could see that in the actual live capture. But in these, you can't see that at all. And so anyway, it's interesting. I wish that we had access to that data, but I'm not going to hold my breath anytime to see that we're actually going to get it. But it was only because of that release that we did get something that helped us to break the story, get scientists to change and come on board, now engage in this subject. And I'm enthusiastic about it. It's just fabulous.
I know, right?
So
I think it's
A
fascinating.
paradigm.
It is a paradigm shifter.
Yes.
Complete game changer.
And if we can get more people to actually take and get better data when they see these objects, there are wonderful applications out there. I'm going to be talking about this probably at the conference, but there are applications that people can use on their phones which would help us to do it better if they learn how to use those types of things. But there's like a little app that's even called Theodolite. That if witnesses would actually use Theodolite instead of their camera, we would get more data, because it has the GPS location, it has the bearing, it has the azimuth. It also would be able to help us to take and size up what the size of the object was, its angular size. And it's all in that one little screen that looks, you'd be able to see it and just take a photograph. And it has even a mail feature. You can mail it to somebody. And so I've been working with TTSA and a number of people to say, you ought to be using this kind of an app, and they're excited about it. And
I have that app.
Yep.
It was suggested to me for for ghost hunting, actually. So.
Yep, it's a good app, and they're developing one from a Project Capture. A friend of mine by the name of Rob Freeman up in Canada actually had developed, and I think that TTSA is now going to be able to they're going to be making an app that they'll be able to push out, and they'll have people do it. But I talked with Lou, and I indicated to him that the theodolite was even far better than Project Capture was. So maybe they'll try to combine the two or somehow put them together in some capacity to help us out. But it's that kind of thing that we need. We need infrared. We need to be able to get people to take pictures in infrared, or even use spectral camera or a spectral lens, if you would, because we could get the diffraction gratings on those cameras, and you might be able to break it out into its chemical analysis on the light, if it would. People don't understand angular size and the distance. If you see a car in front of you, it looks big. When you see it about a mile down the road on a highway, it looks mighty small.
Mm-hmm.
And if I asked you to tell me what's the size of that object that you saw, and if you had your hand out at arm's length, what would be the size of that? Would it be the size of a pinhead? That's how we have to determine angular size, and it gets really challenging because people overstate their angular sizes. You try to estimate the size of how big do you think your car is if I have it up in the sky at about a mile. Can you tell me what the size of your car is? No, I can't tell you. I don't even know what my size of my car is. So those are the kinds of things we run into, is that the general public is not educated enough about determining angular size. They don't even know what that means. Maybe in some cases they don't have those kind of like critical eyes to be able to know, what does an airplane size? What does that mean? What about navigation lights on an aircraft? And what do I look for? And that's where it gets to be challenging. But when somebody says, wait a minute, I saw a silver disc-shaped object that was about a foot away from me, yeah, my eyes light up. There's like, wow, that's great.
Do you get that a lot?
Yeah, not a lot, but I mean, there are some close encounters, and it's those that are pretty exciting because they obviously see something right in front of them, or whatever like that, and it's a lot closer distance and a mile out and somewhere else. So it's pretty wild.
That is pretty wild. I am actually terrible at distance. It's like I have this brain malfunction, but the thumb thing I'm great at. If I'm looking at it at the length of my arm, then this is what it looks like. I can do that all day long. But I am terrible at calculating distance, just judging. I think a lot of people are, unless you've had a reason to be trained in that, or you just have a natural inclination. But
exactly, yeah, and so that's where we go with the pilots. Tend to have a little bit more, understanding of that angular size and various other kinds of things, and even trigonometry. And so you can get a well-educated pilot that would understand that, and they know what an object looks like at a certain height. Because if you've ever flown up and looked out of the airplane as you're taking off, and you're looking down and you're seeing that car get smaller and smaller, and you can't even see it anymore, right? So wait a minute, here's an object, and how do I determine what it looks like now up in the air when I'm? It's like, what? So it's really interesting. And you have to understand how to do that. And again, the general public isn't aware of that. And so we don't get oftentimes accurate data to work with. And then investigations are not necessarily done well. And that's another problem holistically. We've had a lot of people in MUFON that I've read reports across the states, and I've looked at, and I'm saying, well, the quality isn't there on their case investigation, and they didn't look very broadly. They could have contacted other people like police departments, or they could have contacted even air traffic control and gotten more information about something like that. And they didn't even do that. So they're not they're not thinking very broadly when they do it. And they'll just, call it an unknown or whatever like that and not really do well. And then we have people that are, they're looking at like lens flares. If you've ever pointed your camera towards a light source and seen a little blue light that's around it, well, that's a lens flare, and I'll see case investigations out there where they're calling it unknown and it's actually a lens flare. So it's like...
Yes. And, I get those in so many of my sunset pictures that and they're different colors. They're blues, they're greens, they're reds,
blue,
they're golds. I mean...
Exactly. Yeah.
And as a photographer, you become aware of, that's not going to be a print because of things of that nature. A lot of times... like iridium flares too. People are just so positive that they have just seen the mother of all spaceships.
Yeah.
Because this just was push in the sky.
And I've seen those before, and those are kind of like weird events as well. And
they are.
A lot of people don't even know what iridium. What is that? Or what's an iridium flare? Huh? Are you kidding me? And the fact that it's the iridium satellites are going by at a certain time, and they've got big solar panels on them that hit that sunlight, and the next thing you know, you got a big flash in the sky, and you're going like, what was that?
Cool as all get out, though. I love when I see those, and I cheat because I do use my apps to know when there's going to be one, or when there should be one. And most of the time it's a cloudy night, but every so often I hit it right.
Bless you for knowing what they are. I mean, that's a lot of people just don't know that, and they're not aware of astronomy, and they're not aware of all the other kinds of things that can be called UFOs or that are IFOs. And, it's unbelievable. I've seen lenticular clouds being called flying saucers. I've seen, you name it. But anyway.
Well, I will tell you, I saw something come out of one of those one afternoon.
Yeah.
Again, in my hammock. And
wow.
I was just like, because I'm not a UFO seeker, especially in the middle of the afternoon. And I was on the phone with someone. And I was like, because you just saw like a metallic lip. It looked like the lip on a pie pan, like an upside down pie pan.
Yep.
And of course I'm under it, so I just see the lip and then the shape coming out. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I hope they know. I don't know if I hope they know I'm here, or I don't hope I hope they don't know I'm here. But it blew me away because I was on the phone and I was like, you are not going to believe what I am seeing right now. And it is right over my house. And I really hope that I don't disappear from this phone call anytime soon. But it was distracting and kind of mind-blowing, and I didn't believe what I was seeing. But we've got to take a break. I can't believe this. This is our last break, guys. So if you're listening and you have a question for Rich, put them in the chats. And if you are just one of those people that I see just listening and enjoying, thanks for being here doing that. So we will be right back after this break.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Abnormal Alabama presents Crypticon October 25th and 26th at the Board in the Wharf, Orange Beach. Bigfoot, the paranormal, authors and speakers, vendors, and your chance to experience the Psychomantium. There'll be a costume contest and much, much more. October 25th and 26th at the Board in the Wharf, Orange Beach. Get more info, directions, and tickets available now at abnormalalabama.com. That's abnormalalabama.com.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back for our final segment of Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I have had the best time with Rich Hoffman. He is my guest tonight. He is the Rocket City man. He is fantastic with his knowledge. I hope that y'all have learned as much as I have, because I have got so many notes. But, I wanted to talk to you a little bit, Rich, about the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, because you managed that with Robert Powell. You just had a fantastic Anomalous Aerospace Phenomena Conference. You had people there that are just astounding researchers, and as I said, like with Lou and Travis, like, the public face of the UAP phenomenon. So,
yep.
Not to mention,
it was a fabulous conference. Like you said, we had Lou Elizondo there. I mean, that was amazing. We had, he was our keynote speaker. We had Dr. Kevin Knuth. Dr. Kevin Knuth did an incredible job giving us a presentation on interstellar travel and relativistic understanding of how that could work in the context of aliens if they were going to come here, how we would even go also and do that. And that was fascinating. And we talked about dark energy and dark matter. We talked about even use of satellites. Philippe Aileras was on. He's from the Netherlands, and did a presentation of showing how we could actually use the ESA satellite, or the Earth-absorbing satellites that they're putting up, to be able to do UFO observing, and that's open to the public and it's available. So we talked about that. We talked about our Nimitz study. We also talked about the Aguadilla case study that we had done. We just had we talked about propulsion. We had some of the experts in propulsion here at the base talk about that, and it was absolutely fabulous. And people just raved about learning so much in this meeting, and to see these scientists. We had 4 PhDs up on a panel, and they were just interacting with each other and challenging each other, and it was extremely interesting to watch that take place.
I bet that was. Do you have videos available of that?
Yeah, they're up on our. The ones we got. It's really, we're having problems with it because we didn't have a professional group, and it's the first time we've done it. But we're going to improve it this year and do a little bit different. But we had one of our guys, Morgan Bell, that actually had his own camera system, and sometimes it was working and sometimes it wasn't. But we have those presentations of a number of them that we were able to put up, and they're on our website. So if you go to explorescu.org, explorescu.org, you'd be able to go up and look and see the AAPC conference that we had. And I think that they've got the videos up there, the ones we could get up there. This was our first shot at doing a conference, and so while it was fabulous and we got rave reviews about it, we will be better prepared this next time to be able to capture things as well. But
And that'll be June 5th through the 7th.
Yeah. And I'm excited about some of the presenters that we're looking at right now for this. And so if everything goes well, which I think it will, we'll have a much better performance on terms of sound and various other kinds of things that we had challenges with this year.
That's a learning curve, though. You had the information and you had the brain power there. You had some of the best in their fields. Yeah,
and it was just fascinating to see the discussions again that were going on, talking about the subject. So it was just an incredible experience. I can't begin to tell you how just fabulous it was. And it's encouraging because we did, it's not like we had, the con kind of thing where people came wearing, outfits or anything like that. We didn't sell anything, so it wasn't, I had to make a buck or anything like that. We made this thing priced so inexpensively that it was ridiculous. I mean,
yes, it was.
The rate was $150, and we gave you 4 meals. I mean, for a conference of this quality, it's like, we weren't out to make a buck at all, and we're still not going to be out to make a buck. We're basically just wanting to make it so that it's available to the public. And so I'm excited about it. George Knapp, I think he's put it on schedule. He's planning to be there, and I've had a number of others that are out there that want to be there too. And so it's going to be interesting to see. And hopefully over the period of this coming year, I do know that Lou had indicated that I may be on the History Channel with this year. We were just going to talk about science and stuff like that. He wants to do something on USOs, maybe with us.
That would be fascinating.
Potential for being on his next season of Unidentified. And we're building a strong relationship with TTSA. We had both Lou and Hal Putoff, who joined us this past March, and we're hoping to continue that. And Lou talks like that may happen, and so we'll see where that takes us. That could open up some corridors for us to be able to do something. And he's right now. We're all waiting with bated breath on the results of the medals.
I know. That's fascinating to me because my husband is a machinist, and metallurgical things are his color Kool-Aid. So when Linda Moulton Howe was talking to me about this medal, I'm just like, get out. I don't know anything about that. So I came home and I was talking to David about it, and he was like, really? That's interesting. So now, and for donated, sold, given, whatever to Tom, now they've got it and they're testing it. And this is such a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
A huge deal.
It is.
I am sitting here excitedly waiting too.
Yep. Well, we're all excited, looking forward to the announcement. I'm hoping that that's going to happen here, and I'm hoping that they do. All I can say is I just hope that they've done the peer reviews and all the other kinds of things up front and the due diligence, so that we have no questions that this is what it is, And so
they seem very determined to do that.
Yeah, they are trying to do it by the book, which is important.
Yes. And they're already talking about their peer review process. Or I was reading something relevant to that today, actually. So they're trying to do it the right way.
Yeah, and that's what I have to applaud. They're all trying to do everything the right way and to the best of their ability. And it's just you have to do that. And so I know we as a group are watching and hoping that the results are going to be vetted and that they're going to be publishing that, and we'll be able to get some clear understanding from it. But that would be really an incredible announcement, wouldn't it? if you said, well, we've got the metal from an object that's not from here, and you could say that the isotopic ratios are not from here, or the chemical, the makeup of the metal has got some unusual properties that you wouldn't normally see, and that would be awesome. That would be absolutely awesome.
Well, it really would.
I could probably just pack up my bags and get out of this whole thing altogether and retire.
Because, boom, drop that mic, right? But
right, exactly. Yeah.
But, I kid around a lot about, the rock star ufologist, but the interest and the enthusiasm, and this is a real deal. This is not a fly-by-night group of people who are just in it for, publicity or whatever. These are people who have a vested interest. They're trying to make this a business opportunity. But first and foremost, there's the fascination, I think, certainly for Tom DeLonge, in being able to get answers about things that have bothered the brain. So
yep.
I'm appreciative of what they do, and I do, it's like, it's just wonderful. And what's even better is the interaction, because I do not know a lot of groups like yours. Yours is certainly above and beyond. The Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies is exactly that. The fact that old school researchers, old school ufologists wanted to learn from TTSA representatives and interact for that speaks volumes about your mindset and what your priorities are. And the fact that they were more than happy to participate and come and talk as well shows theirs too. Yep. So I think this was one of the coolest events that I wish I hadn't already been booked for and had to miss, but I've already got it on my calendar for next year, and I won't be missing another one.
Yay!
So, yeah, I know, right?
I'm glad. I
am too. And I'm probably going to be having husband in tow because he's fascinated by this as well. So, this is what we do. We talk about this stuff just for fun. And he's always, but it's a wonderful subject, and you are one of the very best people in this field. And I'm so glad that I get to talk to you.
Well, so thank you so much. Thank you. I'm just so happy that you are willing to have me on, and you're just such a wonderful person yourself, by the way. I enjoy our conversations, and I even enjoy our word games. Anyway, it's fun.
I just got back on it, too, so I'm back.
Good. All right. Well, I tell you, I love it, and I love being connected to you. And so thank you so much for having me, by the way. I really enjoy all these things, and I enjoy speaking to somebody that's actually intelligent about it, that knows something about it as well. I mean, I'm impressed with the fact that you know what an iridium flare is. He's like, wow.
Well, thank you. But, I am fascinated by this, and, I get to talk to people who know so much more than I do. Present company definitely included in that. But I learn because I'm fascinated by what y'all do. And to get a chance to talk to someone like you about a topic that I'm so interested in, it's just wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks again for having me. I love you. You're great, Kat. Keep it up. Keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome.
Thank you. And that being said, I mean, I'm going to close on that. That was awesome. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it. And again, if you're looking for the videos, you want to find out more about this group, www.explorescu.org is the place to go. And I wanted to let y'all know that we have got all this wonderful programming coming up this week. We have Paranormal Pride coming up on Monday with Denise Pridemore. I will be hosting Steve DeShavi of the Dead Files on Wednesday. And we have the Paraversal Universe and Ghost Talk Radio coming up on Friday. All of those are live. You can get our archives on iHeart, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and all kinds of other wonderful places. So I hope that you have enjoyed yourself. I hope that you are just going to check that website out. Again, explorescu.org. And Tom, thank you. Tom, what am I doing? Rich, thank you again so much. I'm just losing my mind with that. I'm calling you everything but late for supper.
You can call me anything you want.
But thank you, and I apologize. We had just that brain sometimes. But I will see you sooner than later. So, because my travel time is about up, so I will be coming up there. But
all right.
Thanks again.
You're welcome. You take care. Have
you
a good
too.
evening.
You too.
Bye.
Good night.